Hey, Marcus, I really appreciate you spending a few minutes out of your busy day to chat with us from Wingspread.
Happy to, Cory. Thank you.
Hey, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from?
Sure. I'm the president of the Johnson Foundation at Wingspread, and Wingspread is the Frank Lloyd Wright designed building that was built for the Johnson family in the 1930s. It's the center of our campus here at the Johnson Foundation at Wingspread. I've been here about 2.5 years. I'm from southeastern Wisconsin. We are located just north of Racine, Wisconsin, right on the shores of Lake Michigan. And I've spent the last 30 years of my career in Milwaukee. Prior to that, I started my career working with anti-apartheid organizations in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
and transitioned that into much of the work I did in Milwaukee for 30 years, and then came here in 2020.
Wow, amazing. That's fantastic. So, hey, I know philanthropy, a big element of your crew there at Wingspread, and I'd love to get your insights on how can philanthropy play a part in meetings and events?
So we're perhaps unique, maybe not entirely unique, but close to unique in that we are a philanthropy. We are a 501c3 foundation. At the heart of our mission is convening people, conferences, meetings, all with the goal of strengthening relationships, building relationships so that people can solve problems together. And that's what we do. Philanthropy is probably in an unusual position in that I think foundations and other philanthropists can serve as a convener because they don't necessarily have any self-interest in the topic at hand. And the parties that are coming together aren't wondering if the folks who brought them together have an agenda or are trying to get something out of it. Philanthropy can bring people together and say, look, we really just want this table to form to try to solve this problem. It's not limited to philanthropy. I think a lot of organizations and individuals and leaders can convene in that same spirit if they've got some of the right pieces in place ahead of that. Maybe philanthropy has a little bit of a head start because we do exist for charitable purposes. And so that convening is part of that mission.
Fantastic. Speaking of convening, I've seen the term in and around Wingspread and some of the messaging. I've always thought this is very fascinating, being an art director by trade. What is the art of convening, anyways?
We do like the term art, don't we? And I use it myself in other ways. I talk about at the heart of what we do here. I'm borrowing a phrase, by the way, from politics of yesteryear, but I like to say that here at the Johnson Foundation, we are about the art of the possible. And that's why people come here, because they believe that something is possible from their convening, from their conference. So we believe in the art of the possible. Well, we get there through the art of convening. And it is an art. Convening is an art. And you could say, is there also a little bit of science in convening? And we believe that there is that too. There is science there. There are some key components that need to be present for a successful convening, we believe. But it is more, I think, an art than a science. It takes a good facilitator. It takes a facilitator who can roll with what is happening in the room, who can see what is happening in the room, who can perhaps see a little bit that participants don't even see. And there's a lot of art to that. We find that a lot of kind of really rigidly structured, fill every minute of the day convenings are not nearly as effective as those that have a little more art in them, that have some time to take a walk. And for instance, here we have 36 acres and hiking trails, beautiful gardens. That's beauty, which is valuable in and of itself. At the same time, we know that it helps people come here, exhale, kind of let their hair down. I like to use the phrase, let their hair down, because I can only really use the phrase.
Yeah.
We want people to do that. We think they get a better product if they've allowed a little bit of art in their day or in their week and not be so prescribed about what they're going to do and accomplish.
I love that. In fact, we touch on that a little bit, even in our marketing. We're just inundated with so much content. You know, it's a fire hose.
Yep.
And when there's so much of it, there's that sense of being overwhelmed. You don't get a chance to digest it a bit, and most of it just goes past you. So would that be a similar situation?
I think so. And, you know, we are all inundated, and part of what we like here is that you can turn all that off. But the other thing too, and this, you know, this is about maybe parties other than philanthropy serving as conveners. If they're authentic about it, they are then a trusted convener. And I think that authenticity is something that we're losing because we do get so much pushed at us all the time. I mean, I probably delete 10 times more emails than I open, right? Because it's just a flood all day long. And we all wonder, you know, what's authentic, what's real. And we think the way we go about our work here, the experience that people have when they come here is real.
And I love that because I've had these conversations. In fact, numerous times this week, people have got their hypersensitized now with the media, you know, and there's distrust in media across the board. Authenticity and trust is at a premium, right? And so now more than ever, I love that. Great point.
We see it in all sorts of things that the trust is eroding, and that's a call to all of us to rebuild that trust in each other, in the institutions that we're part of. Otherwise, we're on a scary path.
Absolutely. And that takes time, right? People just tend to rush things. To build trust. It takes patience, takes time, and it takes authenticity. Absolutely. Love that. So how can groups embrace purpose to maximize their time together?
You know, I really appreciated one of the trade secrets here, right, Cory, is that you teed up some of these questions for me, and I appreciate it.
No, come on.
And, you know, I do think purpose might be the most important component. I used to do a lot of presentations in some of my previous jobs and a lot of data work, and I would talk about the what, sort of the facts, the data. Here's what the data tell us about our region, whatever. I would talk about the what. I thought that was interesting. I found that audiences really want to know the why.
Exactly.
The what is interesting, but the why really gets to who we are as people, who we are with each other and our communities. It's the same about a purpose in gathering. So, you know, we've all been in meetings or we've all been at conferences where we're sitting there and we say, why are we even here?
Yes.
Right. And so I think it is key for those conveners, for meeting planners, and for leaders of any kind to be clear about the why, about the purpose. And I think if you're clear about the why and the purpose for the gathering, you will get better participation from your team or from the audience you've brought together. So that's why I think purpose is perhaps the most important component. So what is interesting, right? Why really engages people. And when you have everyone understanding the why, then you can get to the how. How are we going to carry out this plan? How are we going to build this plan? Whatever it might be that you're doing. But I don't think you get a good how until people appreciate the why.
Yeah, I love that. In fact, you and I just quickly, briefly touched on a moment before we jumped on here. And the traditional things of even employment, you know, that the element of checking off boxes because I needed to do X, Y, and Z versus starting with a tangible outcome, right? First, right? So did you guys use a little bit of that methodology? Like, what are you guys trying to accomplish and then work backwards?
Yeah, I think that's what we often advise groups is that is our starting point. What do you hope to achieve? while you're here. If we happen to be the conveners, if this foundation has initiated the meeting or the conference, we try to be very clear with folks and say, look, from the very start, this is what we hope to achieve today, so that people understand that. We then, of course, bring in and this is why we have brought this room together. This is why we're here today. So I always think there's value in that working backwards. Here's what we hope to achieve. Let's talk about how we get there. Otherwise, again, people are sitting there wondering why they're there, why they're going to be there all day, why you've asked them to turn off their devices, right? And so you've just got to be clear about that.
Yeah.
But it's clarity, right? That's something we all want in everything, clarity.
Especially now, what we just talked about, when you're bombarded with just overload of messaging, clarity, simplicity is so important. My gosh, you hit definitely a few of my high points of the week for sure. So I'd love to have you share us a little bit of Marcus White's secret sauce. You got something for us?
I wish there was something, real secret that just got stuff done, right? But I've been thinking about that, and what's the secret sauce for a successful meeting, for building a successful coalition, for getting collaborations to work, for getting departments to work together. One thing I always talk about, throughout my career, is how everything depends on relationships. And so perhaps that's part of it, that everything begins with a relationship. It's the relationships that sustain whatever it is you're engaged in. But as I thought about it, even more than that, I think the secret sauce, and we've touched on this a little bit, Cory, just in the last few minutes, I think the secret sauce is authenticity. Whether it's the relationships, it's one thing to say, I'm spending half my week doing relationship management to make sure, okay, fine, but are those authentic relationships, right? And so authenticity in relationships, authenticity in the purpose. If you're telling a team or a group or whoever you're convening about the purpose, they're going to know if it's inauthentic. So authenticity in your purpose, authenticity in the relationships that you're going to rely on to carry out your goals. And then at a very fundamental level, we say here that, every meaningful change begins with a conversation. And conversations like that happen here. That's what we do. Those conversations need to be authentic. It's not just checking a box, okay, I talked to so-and-so because we need to tell them what we're doing. But so to me, I think the secret sauce is authenticity, of course, in everything, but in the relationships, in your purpose, and in the conversations you're having with people. Authenticity is essential. I
love that. And that also, I would assume that includes the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And I think that's an important element. In fact, we had a conversation earlier this week about that, especially when you're in the element of maybe even the sales. Oftentimes when you're going through the honeymoon phase of meeting somebody, having meaningful conversations, but it seems that tend to not necessarily being that true authentic person on sharing the entire spectrum of it. And it could be sometimes it's things that aren't necessarily comfortable to hear, right?
Well, that's right. And if you're not feeling it, if it's not going to be there, then that's not anywhere you need to spend any more time. And, whether you're in sales, whether you're a community organizer who's knocking on doors, whether you're a political candidate, you've got to have the relationships. They have to be authentic, and when they're not. Absolutely. You know when you need to move on, that this party is just not interested in what I have to offer or what we have to offer. And sometimes if you're competitive, it can be hard to move on from that. No, I'm going to get them on board. We just have to know if it's not there. And if it's not there, you got to redeploy your time to somewhere that it might be, so that you can, again, continue to work towards whatever that goal is that you have.
Yeah, that's great. Wonderful. Would love for you to share the most inspiring moment of your professional career?
You know, that is an amazing question, right? The most inspiring. And I've been thinking about that a lot, Cory.
Oh.
And I have been fortunate to be engaged in really interesting, compelling work throughout my career. So I can go back to the late 1980s working in South Africa with people and groups that were trying to end apartheid. And there are inspiring people, inspiring moments. I think about a lot of other work that I've seen. There's a moment that stands out for me, the first night when I was part of a team that opened what at the time we called an overflow shelter because Milwaukee's homeless shelters were full. A moment that night, and I think about people here at the Johnson Foundation and the family that created this foundation and continues to guide this foundation, and my colleagues here. And so instead of like a moment, because I can come up with several moments that are inspiring and that frankly sustain me. So I thought about what's the commonality in those moments. And I did think of like half a dozen different stories of something that was really inspiring. Frankly, I probably couldn't get through some of the stories without, choking up a bit.
Wow.
And what struck me as the common theme in those inspiring moments is every one of them was an example of someone who lives their life for others. Someone who gives, who ensures that others can thrive, who ensures that others are free. And that core element, I see it here every day. When people come here to Wingspread, we just have the most incredible feedback from guests. And it's because of the generosity of hospitality that people experience, yes, from the foundation, but really from the individuals who work here. And the entire team, whether it's the hospitality team with guests or some of the foundation team that's putting together our initiatives focused on improving things for people in our community, everybody here is giving of themselves for others. And that just inspires me every day.
That's incredible. Yeah, we need more of that. It's the word of what? Selfishness? I can't.
Yeah. I mean, that's
tongue tire, but
yeah, that's it.
That's amazing. There is so many, and I did experience that myself. In fact, I had the opportunity to interview Chef Dave, and
that was a great interview. Yeah,
it was awesome. So that's an incredible trait, just to learn that the legacy, especially in a culture of turnover here, right? We've got people that have been at places for a couple of weeks and they're gone. There has to be something intrinsically core for somebody to stay and build their career or something that they love way beyond the paycheck, right? It has to be in them. And I felt that's amazing that you had mentioned that commonality of people sacrificing perhaps personally so others could.
Well, and the team here does that all the time. I mean, sacrifices personally, gives up things, goes the extra mile, works crazy hours, because they believe in what we're doing. And as you say, Chef Dave has been here 36 years. There are others on the team who've been here around 20 years.
Wow.
And it is a great place to work in a lot of ways, but just even seeing what happens here and seeing the groups that are here, the why we exist, I think is probably a big component of why we have such a long tenured and dedicated team, because you do give a lot of yourself in this work, but you can see why it matters. And I think that keeps us all going.
That's incredible. I love that. Wonderful. Well, hey, Marcus, I really appreciate you spending a few minutes with us. I've really appreciated the conversation. I learned a lot and really enjoyed it. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Cory. It was really great to be able to do this. And we always love sharing a little bit of what we're about here at the Johnson Foundation at Wingspread. So thanks.